The Curse of the Bennett Family. It began as an unassuming discovery, a letter, yellowed with age, tucked into a crevice in the attic wall. Emma Bennett, a 32-year-old schoolteacher, had recently inherited her late grandmother's house in Willow Creek, a quiet town on the edge of nowhere. The house, a sprawling Victorian relic, had been in the family for generations. Emma wasn't particularly sentimental, but the idea of starting anew in her grandmother's home appealed to her. The letter fell out while Emma was cleaning, landing at her feet. Its delicate paper was sealed with wax, bearing the initials J.B. Dear reader, if you have found this, it means the curse has awakened again. Do not read the rest of this letter, burn it, walk away, otherwise you invite it into your life. Josephine Bennett. Emma scoffed. Emma. A curse? Really, Grandma? She flipped the letter over, noting the rest of the text scrawled in hurried, desperate penmanship. Curiosity outweighed caution, and she continued reading. To ignore this will lead to ruin. It watches, it listens, it mimics. The first sign is the whispers, the second the shadows. By the third it's too late. Do not trust what you see. Do not trust yourself. Emma shook her head and crumpled the letter. Superstitious nonsense, she thought. Her grandmother had always been a bit eccentric, believing in spirits and old folklore. This was probably just another of her elaborate attempts to make life in this creaky old house seem more interesting. That night Emma couldn't sleep. The house groaned and creaked under the weight of the wind. As she lay in bed staring at the ornate molding on the ceiling, she heard it, a faint whisper. It was so soft she almost didn't register it. Whisper, Emma, Emma, hello? Who's there? Silence. Her heart pounded as she listened, straining her ears. Maybe it was just her imagination. She tried to dismiss it and eventually drifted off to a restless sleep. The next few days were uneventful. Emma chalked up the whisper to fatigue and stress from moving. But by the third night, things took a darker turn. While brushing her teeth, Emma saw it, a shadow darting behind her in the mirror. She froze, toothpaste foaming in her mouth, and spun around. Nothing was there. Yet when she turned back to the mirror, her reflection lingered for a moment too long, staring back at her with an unsettling smile. Stop it, she muttered to herself. She went to bed with the lights on that night. On the fifth night, Emma woke to the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside her bedroom. Emma! Who's there? She called out, grabbing her phone. She crept to the door and peeked through the crack. At the end of the hallway stood a figure, just barely visible in the dim light. A woman, her face obscured by shadows. Emma! Get out of my house! Emma yelled, slamming the door shut and locking it. She dialed the police, but when they arrived, they found no sign of a break-in. The house was empty save for Emma. That was when the neighbors told her about the curse. According to local lore, the Bennett family had been cursed for generations. It began with Josephine Bennett, who dabbled in the occult during the late 1800s. She'd summoned something, no one knew what. But it wasn't human. It attached itself to the family, taking the form of loved ones preying on their fears. It was known as the Mimic. Emma dismissed the stories as small-town superstition. Yet, deep down, she couldn't shake the growing unease. By the seventh night, Emma was unraveling. She saw movement in her peripheral vision constantly. Voices echoed in the empty halls. Every time she looked into a mirror, her reflection seemed wrong, slightly off. That night, as she sat in the living room trying to distract herself with TV, her phone buzzed. It was a text, from herself. Text, let me in. Her blood ran cold. She stared at the message, her hand trembling when a soft knock came from the front door. Voice. Emma, it's me, a voice called. It sounded like her grandmother. Let me in, sweetheart, I'm so cold. Emma froze. Her grandmother had been dead for 6 months. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Then it stopped. Slowly, Emma approached the door, peeking through the peephole. No one was there. Emma retreated to her bedroom, locking herself inside. She curled up on the bed, clutching the letter she'd dismissed days earlier. Suddenly the room grew deathly quiet, too quiet. Then she heard it, the sound of someone breathing. She turned, and there it was, her. Another Emma stood in the corner of the room, her face twisted into a grotesque smile. Mimic, I told you not to read the letter. Emma screamed, but the sound didn't come out. The last thing she saw was the Mimic lunging toward her. its eyes void of humanity. A month later, a new family moved into the house. While cleaning the attic, the youngest daughter found a letter tucked into the wall. "Don't read this," it began. She didn't listen.